everyone. A very good evening. You're watching The Money Show on ET Now with me, Mubina Kapasi. This is your daily dose of 1 hour long of personal finance news and opinions. We also, of course, answer your questions and queries. You can connect with us by writing into us on The Money Show at etnow.tv on any questions that you may be having on mutual funds, on your existing mutual fund portfolio, or even if you are a brand new investor. So let's tell you what we have lined up on the show today. The National Pension Scheme. Recently, and if you've been following the news, there has been buzz about an SIP in the National Pension Scheme. Just like how you do an SIP in a mutual fund, you could be able to do one in an NPS as well. Further, they're trying to digitize NPS. They're trying to make it simpler for withdrawals as well. So today we are going to be discussing a little more about this investment product, which is also, by the way, a great tax saver. And since it is a national pension scheme, whether it's one of the best instruments out there to save for your retirement. Later on the show, we'll be talking about how health insurance policies have changed with effect from today. Yes, they've become a little more customer friendly, but mind you, they may be a little more expensive as well. So what's changed in your health insurance policy is what we'll be discussing with Bajaj Allianz just after that. And later on the show, we have lots more interesting content lined up on the upcoming long weekend, as well as comparing the big festive offers that banks like HDFC Bank and ICICI Bank have already doled out. So without any further ado, let's kickstart the show, and let me introduce Mr. P.V. Subramaniam, who's joining us on the first segment of the show. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure having you with us, Mr. Subramaniam. Good evening. So to start with, what's also an interesting characteristic of NPS is that I was just looking at some of the scheme returns, in NPS, and many of them actually have managed to give a good 11% return, and that's really no mean feat. I'm of course talking about it from the last 1 year. But, before I go into all of that, let's start off first by introducing this product. It's still relatively a newer product. It was, I think, introduced about 3 or 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So for those unaware, Mr. Subramaniam, what would be the simplest way you would explain, an investment in an NPS? What does it mean? What exactly is this instrument?
Okay, the government of India pays a huge pension to its employees. So sometime in 2004, Vajpayee stopped that and said all the government servants will put money into a pension, which will be called this National Pension Scheme. And they will have to get a pension out of that. And it will not be a pension paid out of the government's P&L. So this is really 16 years old, but it became more friendly a few years ago. What you're saying is also right, and the truth is it's a 16-year-old product. But yeah, in fact, in next year or two, they must be coming up for withdrawals also. And so it is not a very new product, but yes, it has become more friendly. So outside of government, people have started investing in it quite recently after a separate 50,000 rupee window was created for tax benefit after 80C, right? So then it has become more popular. It's a very good scheme. It's a government scheme. But remember, it's not a government guaranteed scheme. It is a NAV scheme, which means the NAV will fluctuate. Once there is an NAV, it will fluctuate. It is not a guaranteed scheme. So that is what will happen.
Okay, so I stand corrected over there. It's actually a much older scheme, but it's just in the last couple of years it's got very popular. Mrs. Subramaniam, where does, when I say I'm investing in an NPS, where does the NPS invest? It's clearly not a fixed income scheme because, there is that fluctuation in NAV. So I'm assuming there is an equity component as well here.
Yeah. So Mubina, let us make this very clear. You invest in a PPF. You invest in a national savings certificate, but you invest through a mutual fund, you invest through an NPS, you invest through a unit link plan. These are wrappers. Okay. Now within the wrapper, what's kept depends on what choice you make. For example, when you put money in a liquid fund, you don't invest in a mutual fund liquid scheme. That is what you think you do. But actually it is a wrapper is called mutual fund. You have to see what goes into it. So liquid scheme will have some completely different things from an equity scheme. NPS is also a wrapper. So it can have a complete gilt, it could have equity, or it could have corporate bonds. Largely, these three are the assets into which you invest. You can take a combination of how much of equity you want and how much of debt you want. There are some automatic schemes which will automatically, after a particular age, keep shifting money out of equity into debt. Otherwise, you could make your own choice and say, I want to be more in equity and less in debt. That's a choice that you can make. So it's basically a wrapper like a mutual fund or a ULIP. And why you got such good returns in the last 1 year? Not because they've got 11% yield on the loans that they have given, but because interest rates have gone down. If interest rates start going up, you will also get negative returns in the debt side of NPS. We have not yet seen that very harshly. But yes, if interest rates go down further, maybe 100 basis points, and after that it starts going up, you will see negative returns on the debt side.
Okay, all right. That's essentially explaining that. Mr. Subramaniam, we see that there are two types of NPS accounts. There's a tier 1 account, then there's a tier 2 account. But moreover, when we look at returns, there's scheme C, scheme G, so on and so forth. Scheme E, scheme A within this tier 1, tier 2 bracket. So if you could just sort of simplify that as well for our viewers. I mean, how should they go about choosing, between all of these?
Yeah, so scheme C is the corporate bonds, scheme E is equity, scheme G is gilt, that is government bonds. So with government bonds, you don't run any risk of default. However, you run the risk that when interest rates change, the value will change because these are long dated bonds. So if there are 20-year bond and 15-year bond and interest rates changes by even 1%, there will be a fall in those bonds to that extent of, because you have a 20-year duration, it will fall 20%. That's the kind of fall that you can see. So largely equity, which is large cap equity, mostly index, and then corporate debt, which is always very high quality corporate debt, which is AAA or AA plus, investment grade, and gilt. So you have to make your choice. So if you're very young, if I'm opening this for Mubina, I would go as much as possible into equity. And I would wait till you turn to be 55, 60, when you can go into debt. So another 20, 25 years of compounding, 30 years of compounding is something which you should get. And you could be for such a long time in equity. And then at the age of 70 only, you will have to convert it into an annuity. So you have a very long period of time. So obviously you should go more into equity. But if you have a 60-year-old in your house who wants to go into NPS, maybe, or a 55-year-old, maybe you'd go more into debt and less into equity. More into corporate bond. Corporate bond if you want shorter duration, gilt if you want longer duration. Your return on NPS is going to depend on your brain power, unlike PPF. PPF, your IQ doesn't matter. Wherever you put, you will get the same 8% return or 7% return. Here, switching will help. So you will need the help of a professional to tell you when to switch. For an individual, that is a little difficult. So if you have a good advisor, you will have to pay him fees because NPS does not have any fee-based advisors willing to do it. They don't get a commission. So you will have to hire an advisor to be able to help you switch. When will you do it? When the amount that you accumulate is huge. What is tier 1? Tier 1 is compulsory. You have to put it in tier 1. Last that I knew of, there used to be a minimum of 6,000 rupees. Tier 1, you have lesser choices, but tier 2, you have more options. You can withdraw where you want. You can put more money. You can choose the asset allocation. So tier 2 functions more like a mutual fund at a lower cost. Compared to other mutual funds, NPS is much cheaper. That is the greatest attraction. For some 18-year-old who's going to be putting money for another 32 years, NPS with its index fund and corporate bond and gilt fund can be more attractive than a mutual fund.
So, Mr. Subramaniam, from what I understand, if let's say I decide to invest in an NPS, I am completely free to keep switching between, scheme E to then scheme C and scheme G, or are there any kind of restrictions about, me having to stay in scheme E for a certain period or anything like that?
No, there could be a financial restriction saying 200 rupees per switch or something like that, but no other scheme, especially in tier 2. Tier 1 could have some lock-in because tier 1 is the one which gets you the 80C benefit or 80CC benefit, the extra 50,000. Tier 2, you will have no such restriction. So you can switch. And even with the restrictions of, even after getting 80C benefit, you can switch. But I don't think there are any limitations. But yeah, there could be an administrative fee for switching.
So, Mrs. Subramaniam, from what I understand, when I'm putting in Scheme E, it's like an equity mutual fund, a large cap equity mutual fund, because it's going to be investing in the large cap stocks. Similarly, Scheme C and Scheme G as well. I think that's the reason why Scheme C and Scheme G have given double-digit returns. I mean, gilt funds in the last 1 year, or in fact, consistently since the last couple of years, have been doing great. So, and NPS is giving me tax benefits. So, why would a viewer not go only for NPS and go at all for a mutual fund then?
Okay, two things. One is you're talking exactly what we should be saying you should not be doing. Don't chase past returns. Gilt has given good returns, does not mean Gilt will give these kind of... Just imagine if Gilt were to give me 11% return year on year, why would I go even to equity mutual funds? Forget mutual funds, right? So that is not true. Next year could be a 3% return or a 4% return. And if interest rates start going up, you would get a very bad return. There are two parts to a gilt fund return, gilt, even corporate debt fund, but gilt fund. One is the return that you get, and second is the appreciation that you get because of fall in interest rate. That I think is either over or very little of that juice is left. Now you'll have to go and see what return they get on their investment. They will get something like 6% return if I'm very positive. So next year gilt return will be 6%. And if the change in portfolio is 0, you will get 6%. If the change in portfolio is -1, you will get 5%. So this party cannot go on forever. So therefore, it may not be a great time to be entering a gilt fund. But for a younger person, obviously, you should be much more in equity and much less in gilt and corporate bond. Maybe a little bit in corporate bond, definitely not in gilt. When interest rates start going up, you will start getting negative returns.
My question was actually just more comparing NPS versus mutual fund. And now all the more, I guess this question will become very interesting because very soon, and as per reports, perhaps before the SERA itself, viewers can do an SIP just like how they do it in mutual fund. The difference is that in NPS, I get a tax benefit as well. So that was essentially what I wanted to understand, that why would I not put my money in an NPS, and especially if I have limited money, the tax benefits I'm getting, wouldn't I rather be better off just putting it in an NPS when it serves the same purpose as a mutual fund and more with the tax benefit?
Yeah, it is exactly like your ELSS, right? You can do an SIP in ELSS. I believe HDFC Life Insurance has started this already. You can already do an SIP in an NPS in HDFC Standard Life pension product. So maybe you should check it on their website. They have started. I do not know if any others have started, but they've already started this SIP. Yes, of course it is attractive, right? But it is, Mubina, it is not either or. Because 5 years ago, somebody would have said, why would you put in NPS? Because all that you're getting in mutual fund is tax-free. Whereas suddenly now there is a 10% tax in mutual fund. Now what happens in an NPS, the amount that you accumulate, 60% you can get it on the spot, and that is tax-free. And the remaining 40% you have to buy an annuity. And that annuity, when you get it back, it taxed at full rates. You'll pay 30% or 40% tax depending on your tax slab. So everything has its advantages and disadvantages. It's all about the wrapper. Understand that the underlying assets are the same. Whether it is a mutual fund gilt scheme, whether it is a classic endowment policy or an NPS, gilt NPS G scheme, all of them, the underlying assets are the government securities. In the mutual fund, you will pay 10% tax, which is 20% tax after indexation. In your NPS, you will get 60% tax-free, and on the remaining 40%, you may end up paying 30 or 40%. And if you buy gilt directly, you will pay 30 or 40% depending on your tax slab. So each person has to decide on the basis of his tax. But however, for somebody like you have maybe 35 years or 32 years after which you will withdraw, maybe 40 years after you withdraw. So what will be the tax slab at those day on that day? Whether the annuity will be taxable, we don't know. So if I were you, I would put some money into NPS, some money into mutual fund, some money into a unit link plan, as long as you can do the reverse engineering and reduce the cost. Once you can do that, I think you should ride all three, because suddenly you do not know how the taxman's mind will change.
Okay. Well, that's true. It changes quite often, even when it comes to something like a filing of the return. Just yesterday, at about 4 p.m. is when the taxman said that, look, we are going to extend the date by by a couple of months more. But yeah, anyway, that's all about the National Pension Scheme, folks. You know what? We're going to throw open the floor to our questions as well for our viewers. So if you have any questions on National Pension Scheme, you can write into us on the Money Show at etnow.tv. And I think we've already got our very first question from Shivakumar Burli. He says that the amount is managed by private fund houses like HDFC, ABSL as well as one of them, so on and so forth. So Mr. Burli wants to know, how does an investor know which one of these is good, or how to pick one of these private fund houses? And I'm sure, Mr. Subramaniam, you may be getting this question a lot for even your mutual fund houses. So what would be your advice about this?
I really don't know, because it depends on which brand with which you are comfortable. Like if, for example, when people take a life insurance, some people are comfortable only with the LIC name, saying only LIC will pay me on time. But I know very many people who are very comfortable with HDFC or ICICI or SBI, because so it depends on what name you are comfortable with. Please understand the finance ministry or the fund managers have very little freedom. They have to invest only in good quality scripts which are part of the index. They can vary the weightage in the index. They can vary the weightage of corporate debt, but they cannot go down on quality. In GSEC, I don't think there is any risk at all. The question of whether they take a longer term risk or a shorter term risk is very difficult to choose. And you can choose two funds also. So I think you have a right to switch end of every year. So what is the problem? Take one, see what works. Don't jump from one to the other. I mean, HDFC, State Bank of India, all are good fund houses. They are running very successful mutual funds. SBI is the biggest mutual fund. HDFC is the second biggest. Why would they not do a good job here? So I think recently HDFC hit 50,000 crores of it. So I mean the pension plan. So I don't think that is so much of an issue. You have to pick a name which you are comfortable with.
Okay, all right. So sometimes it's also about the services that you're comfortable with. I guess Mr. Subramaniam put it in the best manner that we can understand. There are so many life insurance companies, so many health insurance companies, but you like to go with that one or two brands. Why? Because there is familiarity, because you know the quality of service, you know the brand name, so on and so forth. So yeah, largely I guess you could use those parameters of brand name when you are choosing an NPS as well. Okay, let's take on board another question that we just received on our email on this topic from Mr. K. Ravi Chandran. He says, I am 63 years old now. I have around 1.75 lakh rupees in NPS tier 1. Now he wants some clarification. Actually, Mr. Subramaniam, it's a taxation related clarification. So he wants to know, if he withdraws the entire sum now, will it be taxable? And if there's any profit that's treated as capital gain, or is the sum withdrawn added back to the income and then taxed according to the slab? So basically, how is the profit on NPS taxed is what is Mr. Ravi Chandran's question. Yeah. He is 63. So, would you be able to guide him on this taxation query?
Yeah. See, what happens is the taxation of annuities is very, very bad, because, okay, there are two things. First of all, he gets 60% of this amount tax-free. So about 90 lakhs plus 15,000. About 1,05,000 he gets tax-free on the spot today, right? The remaining 70,000 rupees, he will have to buy an annuity. Annuity means it will come back to him on a monthly basis. Right now, there is no choice. He has to convert it into an annuity either today or within, say, 2 years. 2-3 years is what is the window that he gets. So he either takes it now or he takes it after 3 years. He cannot take it in parts, and that becomes an annuity, means that comes to him on a monthly basis. So let us say he gets 6% or 7% on that, or so every year he will get out of that 75,000, he will get about, let's say, approximately 10%, 7,500 per year, or about 600, 700 rupees per month is what he will get as an annuity. That will be taxed at the maximum marginal rate at which he pays tax. But the first 60% is completely tax-free.
Okay. I hope Mr. Ravi Chandran has heard out the question. He's just sent it to us on email. And yeah, remember, if you as well want to talk to us, you can email us on themoneyshow@etnow.tv. Okay, let's take on board our next query. Kanan K writes in saying that I've invested rupees 34 lakhs by putting 8% in debt MF, a majority 54% in equity MF, and another 35% in liquid mutual funds. He's saying he wants to withdraw 8 lakh rupees for his expenses. So he's asking if he should hold on to debt and equity MFs, and also should he invest more in SIPs. Okay, so 34 lakhs, 8 lakh rupees to be withdrawn next year. So that may explain why he's put such a big amount in liquid mutual funds. Now, he just basically wants to know about his asset allocation. Apart from the fact that he needs 8 lakhs next year, he's not given us, unfortunately, any goals that he wants to achieve. But yeah, broadly, let's assume that he's a long-term investor. Mr. Subramaniam, 54, 35, 8%, is this a good ratio, or do you think that it's perhaps a little too less in debt or a little too much in liquid?
No, I think it makes sense because he needs 8 lakhs next year. So out of that 35%, 35% is 1/3. About 11 lakhs is in a liquid fund, out of which he requires 8-9 lakhs. So about 2 lakhs will be left in the liquid fund. And another 8%, that is another 2-3 lakhs. So that's fine. I think he has about 17-18 lakhs in equity, and the remaining in debt, which we can use. So I think is perfect. He does not need to do anything. He can wait and take it whenever he needs. He should withdraw from the liquid fund. He need not do anything now. I think he's perfect in place. He should need not increase his exposure to equity next year after the event is over. For some event he wants 8 lakhs. What happens if it becomes 9? So let him be there. After that event is over, whatever is there, he can decide on his asset allocation at that stage. Because if this 8 lakhs is going to be spent, then he will be excessively in equity. So that's fine. As of now, it's fine.
Okay, all right. And yeah, it's sensible, whenever you feel that the need to spend money will arise next year, a sizable amount, so just park it in a liquid fund. It's a good strategy to do. Let's take on board. I think we have time for one more question. Hari Prasad SV says, I'm looking to invest in mutual funds in the next 2 to 3 months, and he's identified Axis Liquid Fund and Axis Arbitrage for such a short period. So he just wants to park his money in 2 to 3 months. Mr. Subramaniam, for such individuals, are liquid funds and arbitrage funds a good strategy? You flagged off how for Kanan as well, it's okay to put that money in liquid funds. So would you advise the same for Hari Prasad? Arbitrage fund, is that also okay?
No arbitrage fund. He should stick to liquid fund. In fact, between liquid fund and a bank fixed deposit, it won't make much of a difference unless the amount is really huge. So whether he stays in the bank FD of 90 days, 2 to 3 months, right, 60 to 90 days, or whether he enters into a liquid fund, it won't really matter much. So anything is okay. Arbitrage fund, no, it is too short a period. Arbitrage fund, I would give it at least 8-9 months or a year. Till then, liquid funds. So he's fine. He should be in liquid funds, and it hardly matters whether he's in HDFC, ICICI, SBI liquid fund. Ultimately, it is liquid fund. So if he's happy with Axis, if he's happy with the service, if it's for whatever reasons, if he's chosen Axis, great. Let him stick to Axis. That's good.
Okay, we're getting a lot of questions actually on our national pension scheme. Bridge B. Agarwal writes into us saying that I am 59. Till what age can I contribute in the NPS? Mr. Subramaniam, I think he's very new. I don't think he has any NPS accounts. So till what age can he contribute?
I think it can only contribute till 60. He can withdraw at the age of 70, but I'm not very sure. The rules keep changing, but I think he can deposit only till the age of 60, and he can withdraw after either after 3 years, or he can withdraw at the age of 70, something like that. But I don't think he can contribute beyond 60. So if he doesn't have, he shouldn't open. He's got just 1 year to go, so he shouldn't open now. This is good for younger people. I mean, for somebody like Mubina, it's good. But for somebody who's already 58, 59, you're going to contribute for 1 or 2 years. That flexibility I wish they gave. They don't have that flexibility now.
In fact, we have a Dr. Radhakrishnan K as well who had a similar query. He says, I'm 55, can I start? And I reckon, Mr. Subramaniam, you'd have the same advice that it doesn't make sense because you have to stop contributing by 60. So
You'll be able to
I think largely Dr. Radhakrishnan's query as well has been addressed. But yeah, okay. Okay, but we're completely out of time, folks. Don't worry, we will get Mr. Subramaniam back on board to discuss this topic soon enough. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today on the Money Show and patiently answering all the questions and queries that we have received on the show. And folks, if you want to know more about the National Pension Scheme, you can find and catch this entire episode of the Money Show on ET Now's YouTube channel. For now, a very quick break right here.